And here we are coming to you from the FIBO in Cologne, Germany. We are doing our 2025 franchise checks for all 16 franchises of the European League of Football. I'm here with our resident experts on all things ELF, Matt Bressington. We're going to be talking about a franchise that you have described as an organization in purgatory, which I think is a great description of them. Talking, of course, about the Berlin Thunder. Matt, let's get into them in a franchise check. Let's start off with the history of this franchise.
The Berlin Thunder, like you said, purgatory. Never too great, never really awful. You know, they get a couple wins. They're 3-7 their opening season. Not good. 7-5, starting to pick up some momentum. 8-4, again a little bit better, and then it just goes back down to 5-7. So they can't really get any consistency. They struggle to break into that playoff picture.
Give me a little bit of Cleveland Brown vibes with the Berlin Thunder. It's like, you know, sometimes they're close to the playoffs, sometimes they're absolutely atrocious. We'll see what they are this coming year. Let's talk then a little bit about this season, and in particular, the players that have departed from this franchise.
I mean, the players that departed, the list is long, and it starts off with the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Carl Kitchens. Losing him is going to be massive. He's an elite pass rusher. He owns every single record when it comes to sacks and tackles for loss across the defensive line position. He's a phenomenal player. Going to be going for his 4th DPOY, which is insane. They've lost him. He's gone. He's no longer. Even worse, he's with a rival. Then you have Ludwig Myron, one of the best linebackers we have in Europe. Can play all across, can play into nickel, athletic, fast, anything you need. Great ball player. Probably the best coverage linebacker maybe in all of Europe, honestly. He's that good. And then Emil Forvda, massively under the radar defensive end. I think he was one of the reasons why Kyle was meant to be so good. They've lost him, and I think that's going to be a big dent because both of those guys have gone to Nordic and Kyle's gone to Hamburg.
Matt, do you find it to be a little bit of a red flag for a franchise when they're unable to retain essentially the face of the organization in Kyle Kitchens, the multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year? Does that scare you?
Yes, it does. I think when you have a player that good and you need to throw everything at him to keep him in that team. If you don't, then first of all, the fans are going to be a little bit, annoyed that they're going to lose their best player. And then inside the organization, some of the players are going to be a little bit concerned.
All right, well, let's get into some of the positives, some of the extensions and the acquisitions, and kind of get into this roster of Berlin for 2025. So we'll start off with the extensions, at least, who they've got.
I think there's some really exciting players they've extended. Nikolai Schumann, he is an all-star tight end. He's big, he's very balanced, he can play the receiver position, he can block on the line of scrimmage. Really good player. He's been in the league forever. He's probably the most recognizable German Berlin Thunder player. And then Bias Kinder. Honestly, I love Bias Kinder. You remember Carlos Hill in Cologne? He's similar skill set, but he's German. So fast, so athletic, rapid, can play in the slot. I really think that he is the future of the receiver position in that team.
That's a bold comp. Carlos Hill is very, very excited, and you're giving him something to try and live up to there. Big shoes to fill. All right, and then let's get into, I don't know if we could call it a list. We'll call it maybe a singular bullet point. The key additions to this roster for 2025.
Well, I've got Neville Kruger. That's the one I've highlighted, and I do think that he's a very talented player. You've got a player with good size at the defensive end position. He has D3 experience at Dickinson College, great bend in his knees, great snap off the ball, a really good release for someone his age. He's stepping into this bigger role, which is important because at the Surge, he was across that rotation. You remember how amazing that Surge defensive line was?
I do.
He needs to be the guy in Berlin. He needs to be elite. He needs to go over 10 sacks.
Now, I didn't get the chance to ask you, Jacob Sullivan, coming back, is Jacob Sullivan in the conversation as a possible championship-winning quarterback in this league? Now, let's discount 2021 when he technically did win the championship.
Yeah.
It's a whole new league in 2025. The competition has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
In today's league, is he one of the handful of quarterbacks who we could see raising a trophy?
I'm going to go with my head and say no. Berlin's offense last season, I know they've got a different offensive coordinator this year, but some of that tape is hard. I'm a football fanatic.
Yes, you are.
It's hard to watch some of that tape. It's just screens and short drags, which pad the stats. I want to say some of his yards are padded, but a lot of them are 3 yards and then the yard after catch. He had Aaron Jackson, which was a massive rack threat. I do not see in the modern era Sullivan lifting a championship trophy.
It's interesting. You've got a guy in the NFL like Geno Smith, who's also really beautiful stats, but would you talk about him as a potential Super Bowl winning quarterback? I don't know. We will see if Jacob Sullivan proves you wrong. Let's get into their schedule for 2025 and take a look at our predictions of how we think things are going to shape up here. I'll start off with the first half of their schedule. And we got our beautiful graphic here from our producer, Maxie, as always. Thank you, Maxie. They're going to win against Cologne, okay? I'm going to give them that. They're going to win against Cologne. But look, these next two games, man, the Munich Ravens, they're not going to be able to beat them. That's going to be a loss. The Nordic Storm, too strong. That's going to be a loss. Hamburg, however, and I know Kyle Kitchens is very excited for this game. I do think that they are going to beat Hamburg, at least in this first game. Fehervar, they are going to take them. They're going to win that. And they are going to drop their second matchup to the Ravens and lose that. Matt, give us the back half of their season.
Interesting. I like the picks. My picks are a little bit more. Berlin Thunder fans are going to want to look away. I'm going to just say that. So let's start with the Rhein Fire. That's a tough game. They're going to take an L there. Bye week to recommune. They go to Cologne. They're going to take an L in Cologne.
That was a bold prediction.
So a very bold prediction. Nordic Storm, too tough. That's an L. Rhein Fire again. That's an L. Here's a big one, Enthroners. It's a tough one for me, but I think the Enthroners are going to win, and I think Berlin's coming out with another L.
Oh my goodness, Matt Bressington leaning into that.
And then finishing off the season with another L. I think they have a biblical slide.
Jiminy Christmas, Matt. I gave them at least 3 wins in the first half of the season. You gave them none.
I gave them 6
let me
losses.
talk to you then about my prediction of them beating the Hamburg Sea Devils. Do you think that's fair, or do you think I'm wrong there? I mean, you have them losing later on in the season.
Yeah, I do. I think Hamburg have a lot to love. Berlin as well. They have some things to love. They honestly haven't released a ton of their roster. I think Berlin do have a little bit more of that ELF experience. You know, we talked about Michael Leon, the quarterback. Sullivan is experienced. I may have said that he isn't a championship-winning quarterback, but what he is consistent. And what he is, he can get you a couple wins just off being that consistent.
So what would have to happen? What sort of miracle would Berlin have to pull off for us to sit here looking silly a few months from now or 6 months from now for them to have actually a good season and kind of turn it around and maybe make the playoffs? What would have to happen in your eyes?
I think they just need to get a ton more depth. You look at that roster at the moment, it's slim. They're slim pickings. They got Emil Fuchs, he is a nominee for the Rookie of the Year last season for the offense. You have Jeremiah Webb, who we talked about in Science Center, who I really, really do like. Offensive line is light though. They've only got 4 guys. You can't have an offensive line with 4 guys.
You need eight dudes on the O-line.
Linebackers are light. Defensive backs are light. Linemen are light. They need more talent. That's the overall aspect of this team at the moment.
Yeah, there we go. Berlin, get more depth. That is the diagnosis from Matt Bressington. There we have it, the 2025 franchise check for the Berlin Thunder.